Nelson Mandela stated that education is the most powerful weapon and which we can use to change the world. An ongoing debate at the collegiate and legislative levels across the U.S. have been about the relevancy of historical black colleges and universities, better known as HBCUs. HBCUs across the country are mainly located in many southern states established after post-Civil War. Many of these were established as a part of legislation which we know as the Land Grant College Act. I have the unique opportunity to speak with Dr. Wayne Frederick, president of Howard University, on how we can ensure HBCUs remain relevant. Join me as we welcome Dr. Frederick to Growth Talk. Dr. Frederick, thank you so much for joining Growth Talk today. We're here for Black History Month and looking at the relevancy of historical black colleges and universities across the country. And so we thought it would be a great idea to come here to Howard University, one of the premier HBCUs here in our country, where a lot of other historical black colleges and universities look to Howard University as a model for what a historical black college and university looks like. So definitely want to jump right into the conversation of what we hear a lot. Do you believe HBCUs are relevant here today? And when I say relevant in the sense that they receive the amount of recognition and respect across the country as they should.
Right, I certainly think that they're relevant. The recognition that they deserve in terms of people really appreciating the product in terms of their graduates, I'm not sure that we're there yet, to be quite honest. But it's definitely relevant because HBCU grads have changed America in many ways. Here at Howard, Brown versus the Board of Education just would not have taken place had it not been for Howard's Law School, as an example. And then when you look at pioneers in many fields from our alumni base, the relevance is there, right? You look at, in medicine, you have LaSalle Laford, the first black president of the American Cancer Society, first black president of the American Cardiac Surgeons, and I could go on and on. You look at a Vernon Jordan, an advisor to presidents, business person. You look at Kamala Harris, the first female attorney general in California. You look at Cassine Reed, the mayor of Atlanta. I could go on and on. Every night, currently when you turn on your television set, at prime time, almost on every night, there's a Howard alum. Right? Last week I got a chance to watch Debbie Allen and Denzel Washington on the set of Grey's Anatomy, basically direct an episode. Debbie Allen being a Howard grad, you have Lance Gross, you have Anthony Anderson. So almost every night of the week, there's some Taraji Henson, you've got a Howard grad. So clearly, the role that HBCUs, and using Howard as an example, has played in mainstream America in terms of leading in those fields, just about all fields and industries, is great. And we continue to do that today. This is not just a legacy conversation. When you look at the percentage of African Americans with bachelor's degrees in STEM, some 25% plus come from HBCUs. When you look at the top 10 schools who produce African Americans with STEM PhDs over the prior decade, I believe 9 of that 10 are HBCUs. When you look at the top 2 schools who send blacks to medical school, Howard and Xavier. So we can go on and on about what we produce, and I think that in this of itself gives the relevance. The recognition may not be there because people don't connect those dots back to us, and that is part of what we need to do in telling our story.
Awesome, and you made a very good point. So, and connecting those dots, for people that listen to us today, what do they need to do to be able to connect those dots? What would be some of your recommendations?
Yeah, I think part of it is we as HBCU presidents, myself, we have to be out there telling our story as often as we can. So these opportunities, we can't pass those up. We put out a lot of information. I've done 3 presidential webcasts, which are available online. Gives a lot of information about the university, what the university is doing. Our grads are not shy about talking about the fact that they came from Howard. Taraji Henson does it regularly. Our Child Day speaker would be Ta-Nehisi Coates. He attended Howard as well. He talks about how Howard influenced influenced him, not just publicly, but he talks about it in his books. And so we have to keep telling that story. That's one of the things that we must do. The second thing that I think we have to do collectively is we have to make sure that we connect our history. And that's one of the unique things about HBCUs. I migrated here from Trinidad, so Black culture in America was something that I did not know, something that I learned on this campus. And I feel that I got a clear, firm grounding in what that means and in what my role as a Black immigrant was to contribute to that, so that my kids who were born here and are African American citizens of this country, I now understand what my responsibility is in making sure that they appreciate the legacy that went before them. And that's another thing that collectively, whether you attended an HBCU or not, we must tell as part of our Black history. Our HBCUs are a critical part of that Black history, and I think we collectively as a society have to tell that story. And the last thing I would say is that a lot of this has to also have a connection to mainstream educational opportunities. And we have to talk about these institutions in the course of a discussion about education in general, and not have them seem as, well, it's a secondary option. We must make it clear that they are still primary options for where academic excellence is taking place.
Awesome. And Dr. Frederick, I was looking at one of your interviews recently where you were working with students here. You talked about community college initiatives that President Obama presented for free, community colleges. So what do you feel as we move into a new president coming in next year? What are your views on, how do you plan to move for different initiatives as it relates to historical Black colleges and universities receiving some of those free fundings for students to be able to attend school?
Well, one thing that I learned very quickly from that experience is that we have to speak up. The night that the president announced that, I was on our own radio station here at WHUR on a show called Daily Drum, and the question was posed to me as to what I thought about it. And I said, I think a good return on investment for the nation would be to put those dollars into HBCUs because of the percentages I just gave you. If you want to elevate everyone, and you want to definitely support those who are underrepresented and have had less opportunities, I think if you target HBCUs because of what they've been doing and you enhance that work, then you do it. If we already account for greater than 25% of the Bachelor of Science degrees in STEM, and you're interested in having a STEM workforce, then I think that's where you put it up. And to my surprise, by the next day, several people were talking about my comment about the HBCUs. I think that garnered steam, and the Congressional Black Caucus supported that strongly. Congressman Butterfield in particular really pushed that along with Congressman Bobby Scott, and now part of the proposal is to include HBCUs in that. I think we have to continue to be part of the process. Being here in DC, and because we get a federal appropriation, I'm on the Hill a lot, and I am always impressed with the representatives, the senators, as to how much interest they have in HBCUs. But at the same time, they don't see enough of us telling that story to them so that they understand that relevance and they understand why it's a good investment. And I think that's part of what we're going to continue to do, regardless of who the president is, because the nation as a whole needs HBCUs in order for the nation to be competitive. So this is not just an issue of Black America and white America, it's an issue of a stronger America, and America is stronger if its HBCUs are strong.
Awesome. And so when we look at the African American community and we look at the relevancy from an alumni perspective, so in the African American community, a lot of African Americans, we sow 10% into our churches. And so a lot of time, and a lot of research says, hey, because African Americans sow 10% into their churches, a lot of time historical Black colleges and universities are suffering because a lot of our giving is given into the Black church versus giving into the university in which you've graduated from. So currently about 8% of alumni are giving back to their universities. How can alumni who are watching today get involved and become more relevant in ensuring that we have funding from that alumni perspective to be able to help offset the universities?
Well, I think you make a good point about where African Americans have deposited their funds. I have no criticism for that, though. As a matter of fact, again, I think we don't celebrate that enough. If you look at from 2000 to 2012, the number of African American women who have been incarcerated has dropped by 56%. 2000 to 2012, the number of African American men who've been incarcerated has dropped by 23%. I'd be hard pressed to argue with you that our churches didn't have some impact in the community. And on the same token, I'll have a hard time arguing with you that our HBCUs and education didn't play a role in that dynamic changing. But we just don't speak enough about that. Meaning that if you demonstrate to people that the return on investment is now a society in which African American men and women are not being incarcerated as much as they're going to college and moving up the economic ladder, I think you convince people that by giving back and by investing in those institutions, the church and the educational institutions, they are actually improving the society in which they live and improving the circumstance of their brothers and sisters in that society. And again, we have to connect those types of dots so that people see where that giving is. We have to be very aggressive about that engagement as well. And one of the things that I am very, very committed to doing is getting around the country, meeting with my alum. So if you go to Howard's website and you go to the tab that has my president's page, you will see my entire travel schedule. And I do that because I want to make it clear to folks that part of my commitment in this position is to get out and encourage everyone to ask the tough questions. I want people to question, why are you doing this? Why not this? Why invest in this? So that they can see their dollars go to something. I don't want anyone to just write a blanket check to Howard and say, you spend it how you want it. I want them to feel comfortable that we're going to use the money wisely, and they'll see a higher graduation rate, a higher retention rate, and they'll see graduates who are out there changing the world.
Awesome. And I have a question here that we kind of polled on our Facebook and progress of coming here. And one of the graduates said, hey, I am a graduate of Howard University who work with high school students and college students from across the country. Many of them desire to attend Howard or other HBCUs, but simply cannot afford it. What plans exist to make Howard a more affordable institution for those who prefer such an education environment?
Right, so the first thing is it's affordable in the scheme of things. We are a private institution here in the District of Columbia. The other private institutions in this city, namely American, Georgetown, and GW, currently charge tuitions at about twice ours. Their Pell Grant eligibility rate of their undergrad campus is 11, 14, and 18%. Ours is 60%. So we clearly are attracting a student in an income bracket that is having difficulty paying. There's no doubt about it, but we're providing them that opportunity. So what we have done since 2008 is we've increased the amount of institutional aid we've given from 42 million up to 110 million. That's a significant bill. To make sure that it's having the best impact, I think we have to do a better job of the selection of who we give that money to. And so one of the strategies that we're embarking upon is to try to get as many students who qualify for the maximum Pell Grant award with an expected family contribution of 0 to their education, try to get them the maximum amount of help in other words, to give them a full ride. And that's one of the things we're working on. But it means that we have to be less tuition dependent as an institution, right? The revenue stream is not going to come from those students who already can't afford to be here. And then two, we don't want them to be burdened with student debt so that they start a little bit behind when they get out. So to do that, we have to diversify the revenue stream. So we're monetizing our real estate assets. We're not selling. We're in the business of owning, leasing, and then participating in the revenue stream in the developments. That's one of the things that we feel we must do. We're trying to look at entrepreneurship more in terms of getting our students and faculty involved in innovation labs, etc., so that our intellectual property is something that we can monetize as well and make sure we do that well. And we're also trying to operate more efficiently, because it is very critical that there's no waste in the system. And as much as we can decrease the waste, then again, we allow for those dollars to go towards supporting the type of students that your Facebook questioner was posing.
And also, Dr. Frederick, can you explain to our audience as well the difference between a private HBCU and a public HBCU, and the different challenges that you both similarly alike have, but also can explain to them some of the funding that you may not receive as a private institution compared to a public institution?
Yeah, that's a great question. The private institutions, we basically are on our own in terms of trying to get funds from different places. Howard is unique in that it also gets a federal appropriation as a private institution. But the private HBCUs essentially are raising money from alum, corporations, foundations, as part of trying to grow their endowment and then using some of that endowment every year as part of the operating margin, and then obviously tuition, etc. With the public institutions, most if not all of them are connected to states, and therefore they're part of the state government budget, which has been under severe fire in terms of cuts every single year. And those institutions are really facing a tough time as well, because as they try to fulfill the mission of giving an opportunity to those who otherwise don't, they're seeing their budgets slashed, and so they have to raise that money elsewhere, and that's a very, very tough circumstance. Some of these cuts are not small cuts too, which is the other thing that I want to say, because some people may say, well, you've got to be more nimble, etc. That's fine, but when you face 10 to 20% cuts year over year, there's no amount of agility that's going to allow you to transform an institution and allow it to thrive under those circumstances. So the threats are are different in the sense of where the dollars are coming from. I think some of the solutions are similar. We have to raise from our alumni bases, there's no doubt about that. The public institutions have to make the argument to their state governments that they are very relevant to the workforce in that state, and in terms of what type of growth they will get and diversity of that workforce. And on the private side, we've got to convince corporations and foundations around this country that having a diverse workforce that comes out of the HBCU experience is in their company's best interest.
Awesome. And also, in looking at different public institutions, how have you guys been able to sustain yourselves here in Howard financially compared to some other public institutions that have had to make some, really, big cuts? And I know that in the past, Howard, even when you first came on board, have had some of their some financial, challenges in the past. So can you kind of share with others across the country how your administration kind of helped Howard to kind of get back on track and continue to improve as you guys progress?
Yeah, it's a difficult circumstance. There's no doubt about it. We also own a hospital, and being in the healthcare business today is a difficult challenge. So what we've done is we've tried to position the hospital in a circumstance where we can turn that around. So we've contracted with a company, did a management service agreement, and we've had since October of 2014, and we've had significant improvement in the financial numbers there. That's one of the first things that I did when I was named president. The second thing, from a strategy point of view, that we've tried to do is to make sure that the students who need the most are getting the most, so that we get really the biggest bang for the buck in terms of where we allocate scholarships and awards. And that's something that we're getting better at doing. It's a work in progress, trying to identify the neediest students, but at the same time make sure that their academic propensity is where, and capacity is where we think it should be in order for us to get that best return on investment. We've diversified the revenue stream as well, so that we're looking at becoming less tuition dependent and looking for the other revenue streams to do that. And so we've monetized some of our real estate assets, not sold them, but rather what we've done is contracted with developers and joint ventures to get those things moving, and then we participate in part of the revenue stream as well. And those are some of the things that we've been doing. The last thing, though, I will underscore, because I think everyone can do it regardless of what their circumstances, and that is operating more efficiently, leveraging technology to do the work of many, and to do it much more efficiently. I'll give you a simple change. We had a circumstance here at the university where if you needed to get an override to get into a class that was full, you had to fill out a paper form. 5 people had to sign it. You had to walk across campus and get 5 different people to sign that. That's now a web-based activity. Those are the types of things that we've been trying to do to get it more efficient and to leverage technology.
Awesome. And Dr. Frederick, recently in December, you met with leaders from across the area, and you guys had a summit. And can you kind of tell us a little bit about that summit? What was accomplished? What was the intent of the summit?
Sure.
And kind of share with our audience about
Yeah,
that.
sure. We looked at what was taking place with respect to race issues on campuses across the country, and we felt that we could bring people into a non-threatening environment here at the university and give them an opportunity to have a discourse about it and try to present solutions about it. It was well received. The students were very insightful. The students from the other schools as well as the students from Howard, in terms of explaining what their positions were, why they were concerned, what solutions they thought were necessary. And I think it was very helpful. The other thing that I think was very critical about that gathering that is important is that we have been seeing an increased number of applications to the university. We're up about 25% in terms of applications. And while that's good, I was concerned that some of that may be because people are more concerned about attending PWIs. And while HBCUs may benefit from attracting more students, we did not have legislation, and we did not have court cases like Brown versus the Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas, to go back to where we have a segregated system. And I think it's important that across the country, students of color can go to any school they'd like to and be comfortable and thrive in that environment. And therefore, we felt it was necessary to participate in that dialogue and discussion in order to get that. And we're going to put out a white paper about that that will discuss both the findings and some of the solutions that we felt would be relevant for the circumstance today.
Awesome, awesome. And to kind of wrap up today's conversation, I kind of want to ask you, and in a sentence, explain the HBCU experience that would challenge or make a mainstream university core want to experience an HBCU such as Howard.
I think that experience is the one that I had. I came here as a 16-year-old with a chronic illness of sickle cell, being told that I wouldn't live past the age of 8 and then 16 and so on. And what Howard did for me was it instilled the confidence that I could be anything that I wanted to be. I wanted to be a physician. I didn't know exactly what that meant, what path I needed to take to get there. I had no interest in surgery, and I think that's what the HBCU experience is about. It instills confidence in you, and it also takes you in and makes you not just realize the dream that you think you have for yourself, but I think it also opens up a wider possibility for you. And I think that's the difference with the HBCU experience. There's nothing like instilling confidence in a young person about their own ability, but then more importantly, making them recognize that when they leave an HBCU, their responsibility is to then go out and change the world around them.
Awesome. And one word, describe Howard University.
Excellent.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much again for coming and speaking with us here on Growth Talk. It's been an awesome experience, and I think others across the country are going to kind of glean from your great ideas here today and kind of give them some great points to kind of talk to. And I look forward to seeing that white paper as well as we share with our audience on some lessons learned and best practices to be able to move forward in 2017. Awesome.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
My pleasure.